This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi on the Tom Bigby River called Columbus. Sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Tonight's episode is Columbus, gambling, and the old Dixie Mafia. The Dixie Mafia, also known as the Dixie Mob, is a criminal organization that's been active in the southern United States since at least the late 1950s, early 1960s. Their name is synonymous with illegal bootlegging, gambling, contract killings, safecracking, and murder. They first emerged in the American South in the 1960s, but they grew out of a long and storied history of organized crime in the South. Members were not united by any loyalty or oath and were loosely connected by a willingness to commit any crime from extortion to murder, if there was money to be made. From the early 1800s, gambling establishments existed in present-day Columbus and Lowndes, formerly Monroe County. Conflicts over illegal gaming and the ineptness of law enforcement has been a recurring theme in Lowndes County. Local law enforcement efforts to curb gambling has been seen as something akin to a Keystone Cop movie. Political corruption and inept law enforcement influenced the county's development into the 19th and early 20th centuries. Some would argue into the mid and late 20th centuries. The 1800s saw the rise of pool halls on Main Street, bookmaking, and organized prostitution near the college, all of which flourished into the 20th century. Early 20th century vice prospered, due in large measure to the presence of the military base in Columbus and, of course, nearby Mississippi State University. The pool halls and prostitutes and tigers' dens, enthusiastically supported by the local population, steadily grew as the people began to engage in the consumption of vice. It was also further promoted and supported by developing technologies that marked the late 19th century. The telephone and wire services made profitable gambling networks feasible and allowed bookies to take bets from a wider range of gamblers on just about any sporting event held around the country. Bootlegging grew even more profitable. Lots of regional bootlegging producers and traffickers sprang up, modeling the systems created by larger and more urban crime rings around the country. They also created sophisticated networks to evade or pay off local law enforcement. Despite Prohibition's repeal, Mississippi remained dry, further fostering the region's illegal alcohol producers and distributors. The collapse of the financial systems leading to the Great Depression did not stymie the illegal alcohol trade one bit. Nope, instead it exploded. While regular unemployment rates soared well into the double digits, area citizens secured jobs in the bootlegging industry. This not only helped certain individuals on the not so fringe of entrepreneurial society not only survive the Depression, but many got wealthy in the process and became allegedly respectable citizens in Columbus. By the late 1950s and into the 1960s, the developing connections with organized crime enabled the town's gaming industry to transition from a local decentralized controlling agency to a more organized, if not more sinister, brand of vice, sale, and management. At that juncture, most local gambling venue owners either left or were absorbed by the Dixie Mafia. During the height of the Dixie Mafia's prominence, during the 1950s and 60s, illegal gambling establishments and brothels also operated relatively openly without fear of significant punishment from law enforcement. The economic prosperity and economic stability of the post-war era in Lowndes County allowed gambling establishments to earn great profits on the willingness of local wealthy social elite and middle class citizens to spend their disposable income on booze and gambling. In town, near the train depot and near Factory Hill, were bust out joints and tigers' dens targeted toward working class gamblers that were devoid of the glitz and glamour of, say, the country club set. Their games in those particular gambling establishments promised large returns on very small wagers, but almost always failed to deliver a win. The games were usually fixed to benefit the house, and the games had no skill attached to them and did not require any significant skilled performance. Alongside these gaming halls, brothels grew up, and the madams made bank starting in the 1900s. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, local reformers and church councils attempted, unsuccessfully, mind you, to eliminate gambling and prostitution in town. But law enforcement, vice squads, and residents sympathetic to gambling blocked any form of reform, mostly because they were on the take. It was not profitable to them to get rid of the gambling. In the 1950s, the Kefauver Committee, which was a Senate committee to investigate crime and interstate commerce, held televised hearings nationally that created pressure on the federal government to address issues of corruption and organized crime. But not in Columbus. Why? Simply, put it this way, the local Columbus royalty always had money ready and liked their casinos for emotional and economic reasons. These casinos were backdoor deals and usually in places like the country club or in nightclubs in town. And so organized criminal units remained connected to all these investments, this Columbus royalty, as marks. Their local organized criminals no longer had to invest so much of their dollars in graft and payoff in order to make any money or to keep from going to jail and being busted, because the high rollers and frequent flyers in those establishments were the doctors, the lawyers, the judges, the chief of police, the mayor, the sheriff, and pastors of Lowndes County and surrounding areas. They were now open to being blackmailed by the criminals. During the 1970s, Columbus struggled with high unemployment, rising crime rates, increasing drug use, and a miserable economic condition plagued the whole country, but especially the Deep South. Commercially, economically, socially, and politically, this area faded into a shadow of the prominence it had once held. But out of that came the rise of conservative evangelical movements, such as Jerry Falwell's Moral Majority and Pat Robertson's Christian Coalition, and the rise of focus on the family in the 90s. Gambling was still a big part of Columbus elites' lives, and they gambled at home in their private clubs, in their camps, in their houses, at the beach, and at the country club, and in the back rooms around the county. But they always showed up to church on Sunday. Columbus excelled at accommodating the demand for vice and attracted four characters to this town, four of the most successful safecrackers in the 20th century in the United States. And they were so good, so notorious, and so recognizable by their craft that when a safe was cracked in the U.S., local law enforcement was asked if any of the four were out of town during the crime. They were loosely connected by their safecracking skills and by a willingness to commit any crime, from running gambling rings, laundering money, extortion, and even murder. As long as there was money to be made, they were probably involved. And they were part of what local law enforcement now knows were the Dixie Mafia. Join me on my next episode when I begin to identify some of these members who lived locally who were part of the Dixie Mafia and some of their exploits in the community and around the state, as well as some of the murders that are associated with that era. Until next time.